Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 32 All the Way. Christmas Day, this bizarre world of our year is almost coming to an end. And since everybody's supposed to be under, lockdown conditions or staying in one place, I thought I would take this opportunity to bring back someone who's been here before. Is turning out to be a little bit of a mentor, definitely a friend and a colleague. We brought back Mr. T Phipps. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm
Doing
doing
well, thank you.
great. Merry Christmas. So let's start at the beginning. You were here a little while ago. We were talking a little bit in general about everything, and I got pretty interested, and we formed a friendship about some of the writing stuff and that off camera. So I went back and I started looking at some of your stuff, and I jumped into Rules of Supervillainy, which I thought we would talk about today. Why don't you, for for everyone who has not seen our first interview, why don't you give us a little bit of rundown, and then I'll give you some thoughts and some questions I had about it.
Oh, yes. The Rules of Supervillainy is the first book of the Supervillainy saga, which is 6 books so far, and is kind of my homage to the 40 years of fandom that I've had since pretty much my swaddling close of comic books. I grew up with Spider-Man underoos and bed sheets and putting the comic books on my wall, and eventually I moved on to the rest of fandom, but enjoyed all the movies, and well, it's now everywhere. And while the MCU was at its early height with Iron Man, I was like, I need to just sit down and write my own little homage to superheroes as a whole. And the idea was, what if I did an evil Spider-Man? Except, from that concept, I had the idea of with great power comes great irresponsibility. And I moved away from the evil concept and more to a guy who gets a magical cloak that gives him the powers of, well, magic and more or less a ghost. And he decides, I'm going to use this to get rich. And from there, he blunders sort of his way through trying to be a supervillain, but not being quite evil enough to pull it off. You see, he has a very romanticized view of supervillains and, being like, I'm going to be petting my white cat and robbing banks to make my fortune. And it turns out in his world, supervillains really are bad people.
It's just their day job.
Yeah, and for him, it's more just being a professional criminal, and he gets also pulled back by his wife Mandy, and who could have been a superhero herself, but failed due to bad performance, in that sort of Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Hardin sort of way.
I feel that you could have easily. Sorry, I feel that you could have very easily made him the superhero of the story instead of the villain of the story. He did what I thought about him was it doesn't seem like he would have cared which side it was on as long as it would have benefited him.
Well, in that case, I think it's a bit more realistic that a lot of people don't have the same level of selfish self-sacrifice that so many other superheroes, and they don't have the bank account of Bruce Wayne that allows them to do this professionally.
Mm-hmm.
In Gary's case there, he has the powers, but he just lost his job as a bank teller and is also carrying around what I think is something best as middle-class anger, which is just that burgeoning sense that the world is not quite right and figuring and lashing out about it. In this case, Gary has issues with his former employers, with the way he's constantly kicked around, and just the way the world is set up that don't really make him quite able to be a protector of the status quo the way Superman or Batman tends to be.
I think what's really great about of everything you're explaining to everybody is that this you talked about the comic book references, you talked about where it's come from, the difference between good and evil. The two main characters very much, to me, almost give off like a honeymooners
feeling. Well, that's a very interesting. That's a very interesting perspective there, and but in the main, I think all the dynamics of Gary's supporting cast also illuminate on him and who he is just as well. But they're great characters to write in their own right. The main character is obviously Gary, and again, he wants to just be the would-be Doctor Doom, but nowhere near able to pull it off. And maybe he'll be Dr. Octopus in a few decades. But in the thing about his magic cloak, the Reaper's cloak, which allows him to turn into substantial, fire, ice, and also has the very low level healing factor, so he can get his ass beaten on a regular basis to survive, is that it also comes with the ghost of the Nightwalker cloak, who is of course be like, wow, I'm stuck with an idiot.
Yes, which he makes it very clear to Gary repeatedly that he does not seem to think too much of Gary on any level.
Gary is actually much smarter than he appears there, but he has very poor impulse control and is a selfish prick on his best day. And but one thing he is a very good husband, because he married his college sweetheart, and she again could have become a secret agent kind of superhero herself there, but for just some bad life choices that knocked her out of that area. And I also feel that as another area of conscience for Gary, because she's looking like, you got an opportunity to be someone you've always wanted to be, and I envy that. And while I'm supporting you, I'm also not going to encourage you to do something stupid like, I don't know, rob a bank, which is Gary's like first plan is. The book opens with a chapter of Gary stopping a bank robbery so he can rob the bank himself.
Yes.
Which pretty much summarizes the character in a little way there. And gradually Gary meets up with other strange, if you remember the movie Mystery Man, I would call not quite people who deserve to be in the A-list of the superhero world. Yeah, there's his ex-girlfriend from high school, which of course just shows the interconnectedness of the world there, who has become a professional henchwench. The Harley Quinns of the world there. Mm-hmm. And she could be a supervillain of her own there, but never quite hit the brakes. And she ends up working for Gary, sort of. I think sometimes I feel like she's working for Cindy. And Diablo Man, who was an A-list villain, but is kind of sort of the Mike Tyson in the Cactus, like, are you still boxing? Why are you? Yeah, just like, past his prime there, best days at this point, but lots of knowledge about how the supervillain game works that Gary can learn from, but also the realization that he blew through his fortune and goodwill way too early.
Diablo, to me, was what, like I said, when we were discussing this before, probably my favorite character. And to me, I don't know what you feel about this, but just screams his own story.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing there. If you do a fully realized supporting character, you want to be able to write your own books on that. And I think all of my main characters are people that could probably have their own comic book series. It's just they happen to be hanging around Gary's world as is.
That's great. No, like you said, I really enjoyed it. Hoping to delve into it a little bit more. I like the idea of the, like you said, you brought in everything from that world, from the comics. But like I said, I can also see, again, the Honeymooners reference. We had talked before, not to give away too much of the other characters too. Whenever I think of Diablo, I just think of a rumpled old Abe Vigoda from Barney Miller, just a guy who's seen it all, done it all. He's not, there's nothing wrong with him mentally. It's just, he's starting to slip. His days gone by. I can't not picture Diablo without a rumpled raincoat and the hat on sort of sideways.
Oh, yeah. Diablo Man could have been was the bane of the 90s in his world, or the Deathstroke, and kind of like, 20 years later, not quite there, but I think he tolerates Gary much more than he should there, because Gary was a fan, so to speak, as much as people can be of supervillains in their world. And it soothes his ego after having realized how far he's gone down. So one character I got to add this one. One comparison I really liked is someone said Gary is kind of the supervillain Rocky, with Diablo Man serving as the Mickey there. It's like, you're at the very bottom of the villain heap, man, but we can work you up, get you training.
That's awesome.
You could be a contender. Oh, yeah.
So how much does this all switch over from Agent G, your other series?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had a good luck to do multiple series, but if I had to choose my second favorite of my creations, it's Agent G, which is an entirely different sort of work than Gary, which is just an extended homage to superheroes in general. Agent G is kind of my combination of Johnny Mnemonic and James Bond, just a cyberpunk spy or sci-spy series, which is a bit more of a chocolate and peanut butter kind of thing there that doesn't necessarily think you would work together, but I think really works well. Agent G is a assassin working for a private corporation known as that goes under the International Refugee Society as its cover identity, and they provide the super rich with the world's most effective assassins. They will get rid of anyone they want for their multi-million-dollar fee and make it look like an accident. And G is one of their enhanced operatives, and they have a little bit over his head in the fact that they've removed all of his memories along with all the memories of all their other operatives. They don't even have their identities, but if you serve them for 10 years, they promise they'll return them. I mean, they're obviously everyone who is one of their agents suspects this is not the truth, but it's not like they have much of a choice. And the society also is keeps them in enough of a gilded cage with their martini shaken not stirred public identities and fees that none of them are willing to rock the boat too much, especially since they can just turn you off with the flick of a switch.
Oh, okay.
G is called literally the letter G because he's one of their 26, and each one has a letter.
So is it a little more serious in tone than the Rules of Supervillainy?
Well, the Rules of Supervillainy World is ridiculous.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's that hard.
Oh, yes. It's completely, utterly insane from top to bottom there. And it gets funnier with the fact that everyone treats the insanity with perfect seriousness. I tried to do with what Mel Brooks did with Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles. Is like the story is serious, even as everyone is utterly insane in it. And with Agent G, it's the fact the world is taking this all deadly serious with, the secret terrorist plot with the nano plague, or or we replaced the president of Italy with a guy who's brainwashed and has new facial features. But no, G is just an asshole from beginning to end and takes absolutely none of this seriously. Doesn't care whether he lives or dies particularly, so he can say whatever on his mind. All he really wants to do is get the slightest bit of fragments of memories that says, I did have a life before this and people that I did love and care for. So I'm trying to just get through this no matter what nastiness I have to do. And but he has no respect for any of the people in authority there, and he's too expensive to replace. So there is a bit of humor in that. And the first book is him also making his own behind the scenes attempts to get back his memories and find out his past, and also see if he can screw the society on the way out. And I feel like that's very good just for the first book. And there's 3 so far with Agent G Infiltrator, Agent G Saboteur, and Agent G Assassin. And also one thing about this is it starts in the present, so to speak, with G just being like 2020, which was a couple of years in the past anyway, but just tomorrow by a couple of years, even though the technology is extremely advanced and kept hidden from the public. But gradually things unravel entirely about the world because of all this conspiracy and corporate malfeasance and technology getting out to the public. And by the 3rd book, things have utterly gone to shit. It's over a 20-year period, and by that point, things are just now much closer to Blade Runner than they are to ourselves there. Environmental collapse, capitalist ascension, civil war is all across the world, and, famine, all those things. And, but at least we have hoverboards to speak and flying cars. I thought that was a really interesting way of seeing how, your typical cyberpunk dystopia might emerge, and doing it against like what would normally be the villain of a cyberpunk series, the well-dressed corporate assassin, amused me.
It's like I said, it's an interesting take on it. It's so many, so many of the things that are going on right now, so many of the things that, we can write into a story, so many of the things that people view as conspiracy theories. There's so many other ways to take that kind of story. And again, to, not to use a cliche, but the whole future is now. Well, it is. It still amuses me when you pick up a book from 20, 30 years ago when, excuse me, 1998 was so far off. Well, that's over 20 years ago now.
Oh, yeah. Funny thing there, I did the villains of the evil overlords list. Where
I'm
just
not
like
sure.
someone, well, it was an online thing that was very popular in the 90s where basically like lists 100 things that if I was an evil overlord, I would avoid.
Oh,
And I
okay.
kind of did, yeah, I did one of those kind of articles for myself, which was top signs we're living in a cyberpunk future. And I just listed the 100 ridiculous things that are currently true, ranging from a reality television show star as president of the United States, the fact that that with the California wildfires, that the Coca-Cola company was suing for having their water diverted for their free water sales, not free water, but purified water, and just all these crazy little things there. The internet as a whole, and the fact cyberpunk hackers, which were a ridiculous idea in the 80s, are actually now something you'll find in just about any heist.
It's a really interesting point, and I didn't think of that until you just said it now. But the ideas that we saw of hacking in the 80s and 90s, I mean, I don't want to say anybody, but there's not one of us with a little bit of practice who couldn't do what they were doing.
Oh yeah, it's like
It's just like, really?
Russian massive cyber attack is launched against the United States, and that's something that would not sound the same way as it would in just 20 years ago. But that just happened a couple of weeks ago. It's like,
wow,
the communists deploying the hackers to defeat America.
You are going to have these ones reduced in price for the next little bit?
Yes, both the Rules of Supervillainy and Agent G are both available for the rest of December and January at 99 cents on Kindle.
That's awesome.
Nice little sale to get with the series.
Yeah, you know what? Get through the series, get everybody through the next couple of weeks of blah. January always sucks by anybody's standards, probably even more so this year than any other year for the last little while. So grab yourself some books and stay home. Not a bad idea.
Oh yeah, I recommend just listening to one after the other on the Supervillainy Saga, because it is just pure brain candy with the silliness and jokes and references, and just someone managing to kick over the sandcastle of 2020 and other years that have been just running bad. And also the Agent G Omnibus came out, which is the first 3 novels and a short story collected together. And that's I think it actually reads better as one continuous story, just so you get how things have gone completely to hell in one big novel.
That's awesome, man. You know what? That's absolutely fantastic. I am going to see if we can do this again shortly with Agent G and get caught up on Agent G the same way I started working on Rules of Supervillainy. I thank you so much for your time, CT Phipps, and you're welcome back anytime, but I think I have to read Agent G first.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks for your help. 32 all the way sign off. I'll see everybody soon.